Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video from me, Pickles Parker Reviews. Now today we're going to be talking about Doctor Who, and my channel has been bizarrely quiet recently because there's been quite a lot of Doctor Who news that has come out in the past couple of months, I'd say, since I made my last video, and part of that was because I was in the middle of doing my A-levels. I've now finished those, now finished sixth form as a whole. Feels like the end of an era in many ways, especially in terms of this channel. I was in year 9 when I started the channel, and now I finished year 13, but also I just don't really care about this onslaught, shall I say, of Doctor Who news. And the reason why I don't care about any of this happening, and why I am not excited really in the slightest about any of this Doctor Who news, is because it very much just sort of validates my concerns that I had when RTT was announced as the showrunner of Doctor Who, returning to the role which he left in 2009, and it validated my concerns that the show was just going to be relying on nostalgia now, because the BBC have tried to go into a new direction, it hasn't worked, so now they're thinking, what do we know that can guarantee us money and can guarantee us viewership? We'll bring back the guy who made the only era of New Who that everyone loved. Let's bring him back, because Doctor Who, a show that has been a pioneer for change and growth since its inception in 1963, for some reason cannot do that anymore. So let's abandon ship, abandon all the principles of the show, and bring back someone, just because rather than trying to go in a new direction, you know, why take a risk and go in a new direction? You know, clearly there's no one out of the billions upon billions of people on this earth who can ever make a good Doctor Who again. There's only one man who can. And, you know, people liked this era, so rather than doing something fresh and new, let's just drag that era back up, because that's the only thing people like, and just shove that down their throats, because that will guarantee us viewership, because all the BBC cares about is money and viewership, and nothing in terms of the creative process of how television is actually made. And those are my concerns at that time. After that, I lost some of those concerns. I thought, at the end of the day, RTD, he's a versatile writer, he's a very good writer, and there's a chance that, yes, maybe the reason why the BBC want him to come back is to try and rekindle the energy of 2005 to 2010 Doctor Who, you know, when everyone liked it, and the only era the general public seem to think is good. But maybe the reason why RTD signed on was to do something completely different, and actually he wants to do something fresh, something new, because why would he want to just rehash his old work, was my thought process, and the thought process as many. And my main concern at that point was, he may want to do that, but how much will the BBC allow him to do that? And then it came out that actually him and Bad Wolf were going to have lots of creative control, more so than many other showrunners have. And then I sort of thought, well, yes, it's the same writer, and there's only so far that this series can deviate from RTD's previous Doctor Who work, because, as I said in my other video, every showrunner of Doctor Who has their own vision of how Doctor Who should be. Every single Doctor Who fan has. Me, you, we've all got our vision for how we would do Doctor Who. There are certain aspects of Doctor Who that we personally like. Some people may like the more kitchen sink drama, some people may like the more sci-fi, some people may like the more high concept, some people may like the more fantastical, the more historical, some people may like the Doctor to be an older man, some people may like the Doctor to be a quirky, younger person, some people may like them to be more scarred, more hardened, more, you know, authoritative, someone who is more snappy, someone may like them to be more kind and bubbly and vibrant and very easygoing. Everyone's got an idea of what they want Doctor Who to be, and RTD's idea and vision for the show is very evident in his run of the show, and there's only so many visions that one man can have for Doctor Who before it just becomes something that he doesn't really want to make. So there's only so far that RTD can deviate to what he thinks is good Doctor Who, because anything other than that is not something he would think is good Doctor Who. So I still had concerns that it wouldn't be quite as groundbreaking as a new era of Doctor Who and a new creative vision for the show should be, or would be, had they hired someone new. But RTD's creative freedom, shall we say, was something that was, giving me faith, if nothing else. Then his casting came. Ncuti Gatwa is the new Doctor, and this is something that got me very excited. Because it was a statement casting. I'd made a video before that I don't think I released, but one in which I was sort of, chuckling at the idea of people saying that Doctor Who will make a statement actor, because I thought, well, no, they're not. No big actor is going to work on Doctor Who. And RTD's big pull that many were saying will only really extend to TV actors. It won't extend to film actors, really. And I sort of stand by that, and I think Ncuti Gatwa is a big pull for Doctor Who, but it's not like movie star level, like some people saying like Andrew Garfield or Hugh Grant or something along those lines. It is, he's a TV actor, just based on his previous work, but I suppose the differentials between TV and movie actor, there's not that much difference now compared to what it was a few years ago. Sex Education is very much still a very big budget, highbrow production. So he was a big pull for Doctor Who. I love his work on Sex Education. I love Sex Education as a show, but I love Ncuti Gatwa's role in Sex Education. Seems like a lovely guy, statement casting, and someone who I actually knew, so that was great, and an indicator that not only BBC and RTD were trying to get Doctor Who back into the public eye, they were doing it by means of not just rehashing nostalgia, which is what the 13th Doctor era had tried to do. Once the, gimmick, I suppose we can probably call it now, what it seems to be, of casting a female Doctor from the mindset of the BBC. Once that wasn't sustainable and didn't work in terms of, bringing back viewers, they just decided to rely on RTD nostalgia. Not any other nostalgia. No, only RTD nostalgia, because that's the only era that the BBC seemed to think the general public like and remember fondly. It was evident in that era that they were just constantly trying to drip feed more RTD callbacks, references, nostalgia, but even whole plot points and rehashes of old stories. Characters like Captain Jack coming back for absolutely no reason other than to say, oh, Captain Jack is back. You remember Captain Jack, don't you? From Doctor Who 2005 to 2010 and the hit spin-off Torchwood? You remember him fondly. You don't care about Doctor Who anymore, but he's come back. So how about you come back to the show, yeah? And it didn't work, obviously, but they were trying to do that. David Tennant all over the comics. David Tennant all over the video game. They were trying that, and it didn't work. But you could see that was them trying to bring back viewership to the show. So I was glad that it seemed as if my main worries about RTD coming back in this new era of the show, which was mainly let's rely on just doing the Tennant era again, was seeming to not happen, because Ncuti Gatwa, a very different character, a very different actor to David Tennant. So clearly it was taking this new era in a completely new direction for RTD, a new direction for the show, whilst also trying to get that, public attention and bringing in newer viewers, which obviously the BBC wanted to do with this new era. But unlike just simply relying on old viewers who had dropped off, it was actually trying to target people who had never watched Doctor Who, probably never watched it in the Tennant era, may not have been old enough to watch Doctor Who in the Tennant era, because Sex Education, as I said in my video about the casting, was a big show for people my age or people slightly younger, school kids, I guess, in secondary school to sixth form or college, because the show is set in sixth form. It's a big hit for the people around my sort of age. So they was clearly trying to target that sort of audience rather than just trying to target the old stooges who loved the Tennant era and have dropped off. So it was going in a new direction, a very fresh, new, creative direction, and, you know, something that I was worried about. My fears when RTD had been announced seemingly were just fears, you know, were just the rash thought process of a cynic like myself, and that clearly wasn't going to happen. And then this 60th anniversary has happened, and unfortunately I can feel no other emotion apart from cynicism at seeing all of it. David Tennant and Catherine Tate were announced to come back. You could see that coming from a mile off, and while I was thinking, yes, it's very exciting to see David Tennant and Catherine Tate come back, because people probably just think of me as a Matt Smith shill. I'm aware that that probably comes across because in every Doctor Who video I'm going on about my love for Matt Smith and how I grew up with the Smith era, how I love Stephen Moffat's work during that era of the show, and you know, I go on about that quite a lot, but make no mistake, while I didn't watch it live because I got into Doctor Who in 2011 when I was 7 years old, I obviously very quickly went back and watched the Eccleston and Tennant era and loved it, absolutely loved it. And don't get me wrong, that is still very much my childhood, just as much as the Smith years are. So I still feel an immense amount of nostalgia towards that, you know, and when that era hits on all cylinders, it really, really hits. Yeah, better than anything. That Series 4 dynamic of David Tennant and Catherine Tate is a joy to watch, and the stories within those series are, they're honestly so good. You know, especially Sunshower Library Forest of the Dead. It's just god tier Doctor Who. God tier Doctor Who. I go on about how the 11th Hour or the Pandora Opens the Big Bang are my favourite stories of not just New Who, but Doctor Who in general. Sunshower Library Forest of the Dead is honestly, it's up there. It's up there. It's so good. So I love that era of Doctor Who. I get a lot of nostalgia from it. Don't get me twisted. This isn't just the words of someone who is a Smith era fan, bitter that the David Tennant years is what everyone's talking about and what the show clearly only wants to reference. But when I saw that announcement, really, I just felt very cynical, because yes, David Tennant and Catherine Tate coming back for a 60th anniversary special should be amazing, but as I said, combined with what I thought previously, this is exactly what I was worried about when RTD was coming back to the show. Let's just bring back the old guard, because that's all that can work. And people don't like these other directions, so let's just shut them up with feeding them nostalgia. And it's just companies saying, this is what you like, so stop criticising us and shut up, because here's what you like. And it's working. It's working for franchises everywhere. And it was just summed up by a tweet I saw, which is 2000's kids be winning, and the anger I had at this tweet, it's actually unbelievable. Because doesn't that just encapsulate it? Doesn't that just encapsulate that nothing new is being made now? Like it isn't. Every single franchise, it's so focused on nostalgia. It's so focused on trying to appease older fans by feeding them stuff that they like, you know, cheap, hollow shells of the heart-filled characters that they used to like, and just feeding them on a platter and saying, here you go, here you go, here you go. It's ridiculous, and it's not bad every single time. Like Spider-Man No Way Home had Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, it had all the old villains. It worked as a story. It managed to use them in a way that wasn't just for cameos, that facilitated the story and actually facilitated the growth of Tom Holland's Peter Parker. So even though it was calling back to the past, and I was very sceptical about it, particularly after Far From Home was fairly divisive, I actually used it to create a great story that stands alone. You can watch it without having seen any of the previous films, and the movie still works as a whole and still boosts Tom Holland into our direction. It still, you know, looks to the future while calling back to the past in a very similar way to something like The Day of the Doctor. Moffat's statement was, it's not just celebrating 50 years of Doctor Who, it's trying to push Doctor Who ahead into the next 50 years. Stephen Moffat did obviously completely, negate that statement by wrapping up the loose ends of the Day of the Doctor a mere 2 years afterwards, so much for setting up the rest of the 50 years. It's just, I think, it's not just the one instance of this nostalgia, projects that, feel as if they should have been made in the 2000s, being greenlit now, because who cares about new audience members? Who cares about that? Let's just focus on the all-reliable audience that we used to have in, it seems to be the 2000s. I think about 5 years ago, it was 80s nostalgia, big heavy impact on 80s nostalgia. And because, kids of the 2000s weren't born in the 80s, we could rightfully sit there and say all these studios are just focusing on nostalgia, the 80s craze. But now they're like, yeah, you didn't like that, but you'll shut up about it if we give you your nostalgia, right? Let's give you 2000s kids nostalgia. And it then sort of makes all these arguments about criticising companies for using nostalgia and not giving us anything new, as just the nostalgia wasn't for you. And if we give you the nostalgia you want, then all of a sudden you'll shut up, because your criticism wasn't the existence of nostalgia, it just was that there wasn't nostalgia aimed at you. And that's my issue with it, and that's my issue with all these companies. It's become so oversaturated with them just knowing they can bank on an audience from the 2000s and just feed them the most mediocre of projects, and they'll lap it up because it is. And it seems like that's all that matters. So the thing is, I saw something of 4 Love and Thunder, and it's like, oh, you won't believe the cameos. It's like, who cares? Honestly, this is a Taika Waititi 4 movie. I'm sorry, where is the need for cameos? And why should that be a selling point for this what seems a very self-contained movie going by the trailers? Like, why? Why is that something that every single Marvel movie, every single project these days, every single Star Wars project, Obi-Wan, littered with cameos and references? I don't care about that. I just want a good story. And it seems as if that's all that companies want to give to you. And the annoying thing is people will lap it up. People don't realise what these companies are doing to them. They don't realise that they're just feeding you soulless projects, but packaging it in a familiar way to you, and you're like, oh, I love this. And you've seen it with people. I don't want to really call out people in the Doctor Who community, because, at the end of the day, there's just no need to be going in on people like this. So I will leave names firmly out of it, because I don't want to spread anything. At the end of the day, I don't have really any issues with these people, as people. But it's just their accounts you see on Doctor Who Twitter that are firmly criticising the Tennant nostalgia, and just nostalgia in general, in the Whittaker era, and now seeing it all unfold now with RTD, and they're like, oh my god, I'm so excited that, oh my god, 2000s kids be winning, this is so great, that all these kids who dislike the Star Wars new sequel trilogy for its nostalgia are loving Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan. What? It's mental. People don't see what is happening, and it's just an excuse of, just feeding you the most woeful of stuff, but packaging it in a way you like. And my big argument with this whole 2000s kids be winning is that, why should 2000s kids be winning? Surely we should be creating new projects for the kids of today. How about we give them characters that they can get attached to, just as much as us 2000s kids got attached to these characters in the 2000s? Because I guarantee that us 2000s kids wouldn't have got attached to these characters if they were just, brought back versions of 80s characters. They were new, they were fresh, new characters for us to get attached to. Why do you think the prequels had such an attachment to 2000s kids? Because that was Star Wars for them, and it's only getting the validation it deserves because we've grown up to the 2000s kids. That's their Star Wars, our Star Wars, you know what I mean? But the kids of now aren't going to get their Star Wars. They're just going to get rehashes of other people's Star Wars. We're not creating new media for the kids of today to grow up with and love. We're just creating media for a certain subsection of people. That's what irritates me of the Tennant stuff, because on the surface you could say, George, you're overreacting. Sure, you may be right with all these other things, Marvel, Disney, even bloody Jurassic Park is doing it now. to paper over the cracks of a dead franchise, and paper over the cracks of bad storytelling and bad characters by just bringing back the old guard to paper over the cracks. And it seems to be, working. Yes, all these other studios are doing it, but at the end of the day, Doctor Who has a precedent for bringing back older actors in celebrations. So surely, yes, those other ones maybe you can look at it with a tinge of cynicism, but why is that the case with Doctor Who? Because you liked it in the Day of the Doctor, you like all the other anniversary specials that Doctor Who has done over the years, and why are you so against it now? Is it just a case of this is coincidentally happening with all of this nostalgia craze, but Doctor Who is the one that can kind of get away with it because it's always set a precedent for being able to do that? And on the surface, yeah, I looked at David Tennant and Catherine Tate coming back and I was instantly filled with cynicism before remembering that this is something that Doctor Who has always done, and that's it, that's just the case. But then I think I was seeing the set photos. Now, just what I'd say, it's very refreshing to be actually able to see set photos and see Doctor Who out filming. It's refreshing to actually be getting lots of news and hype about a story, shall I say. They're actually filming in Bristol, that was quite cool, and I was actually a bit annoyed because I live not too far from Bristol, actually, just outside a little town called Weston-super-Mare, and unfortunately I was doing a history exam during the filming of Doctor Who in Bristol. So the one time they're filming relatively close to me, I couldn't actually go and watch it being filmed and go up to Bristol and try and find it because I was in a history exam. So screw you, Examination and Education Board in the UK for scheduling my history exam at 9 o'clock on that Friday. At the end of the day, it's cool to see these set photos, but it's mainly in these set photos that I got very worried because you were seeing that they were bringing back Wilf, they were bringing back Sylvia Noble, and more importantly, they were casting Yasmin Finney as the new companion Rose. Now, this is up for debate whether she's a companion or not, but I've seen it very heavily marketed and people talking about her as if she's the new companion, so, I'm going to assume that she is probably going to be the new companion. If this doesn't happen, then maybe I misinterpreted it, but that's what I'm going with. Now, on the surface, Yasmin Finney, again, great casting. Now, unlike Sex Education, I haven't actually seen Heartstopper, but it's a big Netflix show, seemingly very popular at the moment and very popular with young people. So not only is it another sort of statement casting, getting young, talented actors while they're hot off the press and, bringing them that young talent into Doctor Who. That's great. And on the surface, it seems like a very good casting. I don't know about our acting chops because obviously I haven't seen Heartstopper, but it's that type of profile that I think it is, has been lacking in Doctor Who and something that RTD clearly wants to tap into. So that seems great. But it's when, it was said that, she's Rose and she's Donna's daughter. And I was like, oh, Donna's daughter's going to be the new companion. Oh my god, no. And it all of a sudden just brought back all these fears. Because all of a sudden, rather than just smoothly continuing the legacy of the show and bringing the show into a new direction by creating new original characters, not even the companions can be original characters for people to like them. They have to be connected to the past of the show, and it's just so weird to me. The companion of the show airing in 2024 is for some reason the daughter of a companion we haven't seen since 2009. Why? What? Why are you for some reason connecting this new era, not to the Whittaker era, but to a very specific series of Doctor Who that aired in 2008? Why? It just doesn't make any sense. And why are we, sure, it's nice to see Wilf and Sylvia. I love Bernard Cribbins. Jacqueline King, is it? She's always great. The thing is that it looks like by these set photos that not only is David Tennant back as the Doctor, Catherine Tate's back, but the story is centering on Wilf and Sylvia and Donna's daughter. We're going back to a story we haven't seen since New Year's Day 2010, and we're going back to this in 2023 for no real reason that negates all the other years. You can just pretend as if you haven't watched the Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi and Jodie Whittaker era because we're bringing it all back and we're, tapping into Donna's story after the events of the End of Time Part 2. We're checking up on her and we're seeing her daughter. This is what the special is going to be based around, and then her daughter is going to be the new companion. And you know, this one specific series of Doctor Who in 2008 is now going to be forever connected and tainting this what I thought was going to be a new direction in 2024. The show cannot escape the need to feel connected to this one era that it seems as if it's the only era that people like, according to the BBC, and it can't. You're going any direction because it's so worried that people will not like it, because for some reason it thinks that the only era that is liked is the Tennant era, and therefore you can't do anything without connecting it to that, otherwise no one will watch. And it's just like, oh my god, like, no, this is what the show's going to be now. It's just going to be recycled elements of the Tennant era, and then Tennant's in a new costume, which to be fair is quite nice, but then it's like, oh my god, he's going to be the 14th Doctor, a rumour that everyone sort of laughed at and thought, yeah, that would be terrible, but it won't actually happen. It's happening. Jodie Whittaker is going to regenerate into David Tennant for no reason. But why? The thing is that there's no narrative reason for Jodie Whittaker to degenerate into David Tennant. Like, even if Jodie Whittaker could degenerate, like, it's a stupid idea, but what if she could? Let's say, what if Time Lords could degenerate and regenerate into previous incarnations? If that could happen, why would she regenerate into David Tennant out of everyone? It's not the previous incarnation, it's not the first incarnation, it's some random incarnation. Why would, in narrative terms, would Jodie Whittaker regenerate into David Tennant? There's no reason for it. The only reason it's happening is because the BBC want to get people who watched it when Tennant was on to come back to the show and just slap his name all over marketing. David Tennant's coming back. It's so stupid. And when you could literally just pluck David Tennant from some point in his timeline when he was actually the Doctor. Just do it like that. Why can't you? Why do you have to have David Tennant as the main Doctor? But you know why. Because it can't just be bringing back David Tennant. It has to be David Tennant's the main thing. It can't just be like the Day of the Doctor, where it's like, yeah, David Tennant's coming back, but it's also, you know, intermixed with the current era. So, you know, people may have switched off David Tennant because they didn't like Matt Smith. Well, tough luck, because David Tennant's coming back and Matt Smith's also here. It's still his story. So we're bringing him to celebrate Doctor Who, not just to try and bring those viewers back. But this, David Tennant's going to be the main Doctor. So it is not to celebrate Doctor Who, it's just to bring back these fans. It's just so cynically trying to bring back viewership, and I can't get excited for any of this. Neil Patrick Harris is going to be in it. That's cool. Like, that's really cool. I should be really excited about this, but I just can't, because it's just going to be, oh, let's randomly take a detour and base a whole 60th anniversary special purely on one series from 2008. Why? It baffles me, and I say why, I know why, because that's the most popular series of Doctor Who, so let's just do that again. It's so frustrating, because Doctor Who is a show that's an innovator, that should be going in, you know, creative directions, and it's not going to be, because the BBC is so hell-bent on dragging up the past. This 60th anniversary should have multiple Doctors. It should have David Tennant, Peter Capaldi, and Matt Smith at the least. You know, I'm not gonna have a go at RTD for not bringing back classic Doctors, because as much as I love to see them, Stephen Moffat didn't do that either, you know, so I can't hold that against him because I didn't hold that against Stephen Moffat. And Christopher Eccleston obviously isn't going to come back for, you know, known reasons. But he could bring back Matt Smith and Capaldi, have it be a really cool multi-Doctor story, a real celebration of the show. But of course that wouldn't be as popular as just basing it on David Tennant and Catherine Tate, because, you know, rather than base a story that just says Tennant as a part of it, and, you know, fulfill everyone, that wouldn't cater to that specific era of the show as much as basing it purely on Tennant and that series. And that's why they're doing it, and it's so frustrating to me, and it's so frustrating seeing people just eat it up and eat this hollow nostalgia and not understand what's being done to them. And it's really got me concerned, not just for the 60th, because it's not going to be a celebration of 60 years, it's going to be a celebration of 2008. That's so random. That should not work. That's not a celebration of Doctor Who. And for anyone who isn't a fan of that era, you will see it. I think, you know, we've always been grateful that in multi-Doctor stories there's always been a main Doctor and anchoring. That's not the case here, and it seems as if they've took that. So people have thought, why are you doing a celebration for 60 years? It's not a big milestone like the 50th was. And even though Doctor Who has always sort of done this, you know why. It's not to celebrate 60 years, it's so they can do this special, bring back David Tennant, get everyone to tune in and go, oh my god, that's my childhood again, rather than tell new stories, or stories that will celebrate even the controversial parts of Doctor Who. Then they'll try and get them to watch this new series. It's so frustrating, because you can see what's happening. The cynic in me can't get excited, because I can just, every single set photo, every single creative decision, I can see the BBC executive behind it, greenlighting it, and the reasons. I can see the suits, you know, in a board meeting discussing it. It's so frustrating. A show that has always pioneered going into bold directions is now just solely focusing on the past. And as I said, the frustrating thing is that no one can see it, and I just can't get it. It's so sad, because I should be getting excited for this, but I just can't, because I can just see it. I can see the BBC's intentions for doing this, and if I was younger I would be excited to see David Tennant coming back, but I know why he's coming back, and that's why I can't get excited. And the story may be great, but for me, if it's only celebrating 2008 and nothing else, then I probably won't enjoy it, because I will be able to see why they're doing it. It's like if in No Way Home they brought back purely Tobey Maguire because no one likes Andrew Garfield. It's like that, and I now know how classic fans must have felt in the Day of the Doctor when Tom Baker was the only one brought back because he's the only one that people like. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and drop a sub if you want to see more Doctor Who content from me, as well as content on other things. What do you think of this? It's been a pretty depressing and even ranty style video in parts. Do you agree with me, or do you not? I imagine many people will disagree and say, you're wrong, RTD's great, but listen, I can just see where this is going, and, you know, even if RTD does a great job, you know, I can just see the creative decisions behind it, and it's hard to get excited for this, because I just know why they're doing it, and it's not for good-willed intentions. But, you know, whatever you think, drop it down in the comment section below. I'd be really interested to read your thoughts. Let's start a discussion. That's always great. But yes, thank you guys for watching. And of course, a goodbye.